Don't interfere with anything in the Constitution that must be maintained, for it is the only safeguard of our liberties. Abraham Lincoln. It is because I agree with the immortal words of Abraham Lincoln I affirm the resolution. Resolved. On balance, government restrictions on threatening speech are desirable. For the clarification of this debate, I would like to define the following key terms from Oxford Dictionary. Threatening speech. A speech that causes someone to feel at risk or vulnerable. Restrictions. The state of being limited. My value for this debate is safety, because safety is the best interest for everyone mentally, emotionally, and physically. Achieving safety is desirable and paramount. In order to achieve safety within a community, restrictions are needed so that safety is shared equally to everyone and no one oversteps their boundaries. That interferes with anyone else's safety. In order to achieve my value, I will employ two criterions, one of which is deontology, which means the end justify the means, and the other, which is reducing harms, because they are the best tools with which to measure if my value is being upheld in this debate. Constitution 1. Terroristic threats are not protected First Amendment speech. John Hughes, who received his law degree from the University of Richmond and undergraduate degree at James Madison University, wrote an article entitled Social Networking and Student Safety, Balancing Students' First Amendment Rights and Disciplining Threatening Speech in the University of Massachusetts Law Review in 2012. While the First Amendment protects a wide range of speech, there's exceptions that include immediate danger speech, fighting words, threatening speech, defamatory speech, and obscene speech. This means government restrictions do not violate First Amendment rights because there are many exceptions to our rights to free speech. Thus, our basic American rights are protected, and having restrictions on threatening speech has no undesirability, because the purpose of having restrictions on threatening speech is to promote safety, and safety in community is always desired above anything else. Contingent 2, and justify the means. Schools' ability to restrict threatening speech is necessary to prevent school violence. Although schools should be concerned in protecting the students' free speech, in the aftermath of school massacres like those in Columbine High School in 1999, Red Lake Senior High School in 2005, Virginia Tech in 2007, schools' attention towards student safety has increased, but they do not have the means to restrict threatening speech. And they should, because threatening speech has been a major cause of school massacres. In order to solve something, you need it from the roots. Since threatening speech is defined as a speech that causes someone to feel vulnerable or at risk, there's an open door for school student massacres. Okay, now going on to that, just like for an analogy, when a cat is backed up, they scratch, just like comparable to a kid who's been threatened or an adult who's been threatened. They're gonna be mentally and emotionally damaged because of that threatening speech. To support this idea, it's important to consider schoolyard harassment, which can turn deadly. Washington Post. Ron Halligan was taunted for months. Classmates continuously spread rumors through instant text messaging that the 13-year-old boy was gay. A popular girl in their class pretended to like him just to show their messages to other classmates. Unable to cope with the derogatory speech, the 13-year-old boy killed himself. 2012, April 26, another example. Gutenberg High School in Erfurt, Germany. Robert Steisenhauer, 19, recently exposed student, entered his former school and methodically killed 16 people, going room to room with a shotgun and a handgun before committing suicide. In recent events, it's proven that if nothing is done to restrict their speech, then the outcome isn't so pretty. Now, going to my third contention. When restrictions aren't in place, the outcome is not desirable. Linda Elise is the author of the motivational poem, The Dash. Matthew Chan was extortion letter info, featuring a message board often used for exposing alleged copyright trolls. An individual claimed to have received a copyright infringement notice and settlement offer from Elise contributes to discussion on Ely in 2012. On February 13, 2013, Elise filed a petition for a stalking temporary protective order and reasonable fear of her safety. Elise alleged that Chan posted threats of death, such as "We are coming after you, we are coming after your head, and we will find you," along with personal information such as her home address. In this petition, Elise requested that Chan be restrained from any acts that harass or intimidate her and her family. 1,000 yards away from her. And basically with that, Elise versus Chan, it was basically a case where this guy was saying, oh yeah, I can stalk you, I can say anything I want to you. It doesn't matter if the words can potentially hurt your family. It doesn't matter because I have the rights to this. And she put out a restraining order against him for stalking and harassment, and nothing was done because they didn't follow the restrictions on threatening speech. Now going on to that, deontology is defined as the end justifying the means. If the government puts restrictions which are limitations to threatening speech, then it is justified because in the end its purpose is to create a more stable environment in schools and communities, preventing school massacres, which achieves my value safety and also achieves my second criteria of reducing harms. Because reducing harms promotes safety, my value is desirable, and is an aspect that people want in their lives. Safety in today's world is a very crucial thing. For these reasons, please affirm. I'm now open for cross-examination.
Okay, my first question is, do you feel that warnings can be violent?
Warnings can be violent? I'm not understanding what you mean by that.
Do you think that maybe some people need to use a little force to get their point across?
No.
And you said there's no violation when you were speaking of threatening speech. There's no violation.
Yeah, basically talking about, because in our First Amendment, when it comes to our the First Amendment rights, we have the rights to free speech, but we do have exceptions within it, because we don't have the right to like come after someone with a gun and say, I'm going to kill you, because that'd be immediate danger speech, which is also considered threatening speech. We don't have the right to tell somebody not to go into this store because you're black, because that'd be a type of hate speech, which is also threatening speech. Like, there's different things we cannot do, because our rights are taken away if they neglect anybody else's rights.
Okay. And do you have an opinion on why people don't speak up when they're hurting?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Like, if their feelings are hurt, if they're feeling just a little down because people are attacking them constantly, why don't they speak up?
Why don't they speak up? Some people do speak up. I brought up the Elise versus Chan case in 2013. She actually went to court, and they did nothing about it. And if they would have followed the threatening speech restrictions, then it would have been a better outcome.
Okay, that's all I have. If the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. It is because I agree with George Washington in the position that I am combating the topic on balance government restrictions on threatening speech are desirable. For clarification of today's round, I'm going to offer the following words and definitions. Counter from Merriam-Webster's Collegiate 10th edition dictionary. Counter, definition 5, contrary, opposite, desirable, having pleasing qualities or properties. My value is liberalism, which I have defined as equality and freedom of expression. Liberalism is important because it's dealing with the belief that we're able to express our feelings, needs, and thoughts. My first contention is riots. And I'm pretty sure it's been proven multiple times that when the government makes a decision that no one else really agrees upon, it causes a huge uproar. To begin with that, we're going to take, let's say, the Mike Brown, Eric Varner cases. The judges and the courts have decided that they're not really going to do much or really bring back true justice to the situation. So this caused multiple protests, some violent, some peaceful. But if we're allowed to assemble, why can't we also speak our minds and express our point to you, get our point across to you? My second contention is a personal, personal experience that I had. My cousin was being bullied constantly by an older group of guys, and they would always just assume that he was perfectly fine, but they would always yell at him and fight with him and tell him certain things. Like, they were going to beat him up and they were going to attack him after school. They were going to corner him at his bus stop and just like beat him up there. And he got in trouble because sooner or later that fight had broken out. But the whole reason my cousin also got suspended longer than the boys who actually had attacked him, because he was caught saying, oh, I'm going to fight them too. He felt like he was backed into a wall and he had to say something. So at the same time, we were taught growing up that if someone's attacking you physically, verbally, you need to strike back, because you need to let them know that that's not okay. You can't tell me this stuff. I'm going to let you know how I feel. And if you have to use a little force to get that through to them, then so be it. Silent protesting. I'm going to take this with the 60s case of Tinker versus Des Moines, the community school district. The children, the Des Moines children, the Tinker children were wearing black armbands to protest the ongoing war in Vietnam. And they were also honoring a truce that was made during that war as well. The students, through their parents, they had sued the school because the school had put them pretty much on expulsion. They were treating them, they were punishing them for expressing their opinion. That was the suppression of their speech. This was pretty much a big deal because these kids have been taught in school that they're allowed to express their feelings. And if you can't express your feelings, then what's the point in you having this right? What's the point in us being a nation, a union, if we're not allowed to talk? How are we supposed to be a government for the people if the people can't speak what's really bothering them? So I prefer, and I would advise you to combat this topic, because this is your right that's being tampered with, that you've been given, and you're under the impression that you can have it regardless of the situation. So you should combat it because this is your right. This is pretty much what's been given to you, what you're entitled to, and it's being taken away. Thank you.
Do you believe safety is important?
Safety will always be important.
Okay, thank you. Do you value life?
Do I value life? Yes, everyone values life.
Do you think life is important?
Life is important because where would we be without life?
Thank you. Do you believe a person should be allowed to say something that harms the people around them?
What if the person doesn't know?
But if they do know, if a person knows exactly what they're doing, but they still say something that harms people around them, do you think they should be allowed to do that?
Or it depends on the situation.
In the situation?
Yes.
Okay, do you believe it's justified for people to make racial slurs and saying that you can't come into the store because of their prejudice?
People still fight that.
But do you think it's justified for them to say that?
Not really.
Do you think it's justified to neglect someone else's rights?
To neglect someone else's rights, what if yours have been neglected and you're combating that situation?
I'm asking, do you believe that's unjustified to neglect someone else's rights with your actions?
I'm really not following what you're asking me.
It's a yes or no question. Do you believe that it's justified do you believe that's unjustified to neglect someone's rights?
To neglect their rights?
Yes.
I'm gonna say no.
Okay. So you talked about the silent protesting. Term threatening speech. Are you aware that it's a terminology that's used in the Supreme Court, which is the United States?
I have no idea what you just asked me.
I asked you, are you aware that the term threatening speech is a term that's used in the United States by the Supreme Court?
It's used everywhere, yes.
But are you aware that's used in the Supreme Court? That's the term threatening speech is often used when it comes to the Supreme Court and is often connected to the United States Supreme Court?
No.
No. Okay, so for your first contention, you talked about riots. Could you elaborate?
Could I elaborate? If, even if this is just like a personal experience for you, like if you're at home and your parents tell you that you're pretty much grounded, you're in trouble for something, you're going to fight back and be like, I don't know why I'm grounded. You want to know what's going on.
Do you have a warrant to that claim?
A warrant to the claim that riots are caused?
By restricting threatening speech.
By restricting threatening speech?
Because basically you're saying is that riots are caused if you restrict threatening speech. Do you have a warrant to back that up?
What I'm saying is that if they restrict threatening speech, there could be a possibility of having an uproar, as there have been other times when the government has made decisions that has caused an uproar.
In the United States?
In the United States, yes.
Okay, so what evidence do you have to back that up?
Civil rights movement.
Civil rights movement. Okay, now going to your second contention. Personal experience. You're basically talking about threatening speech leads to violence.
Threatening speech leads to violence?
That's
what I'm saying.
Okay. And about the silent protesting, you talked about that was in Vietnam, right? Okay. So going into my opponent's case, okay, her first question was riots. Basically, it seems to me that my opponent is inferring that when it comes to restrictions on threatening speech, we're taking away freedom of speech. That's not necessarily right. It's actually invalid. Because when it comes to freedom of speech, you basically have certain things that you can and cannot do. It comes to all rights in the United States. Well, it comes to all rights, period. Because that's why we have judicial systems and we have law systems where people go to prison and things of that nature. When it comes to our rights, if your rights interferes with somebody else's rights, then your rights can be taken away. That's why we have prisons and things like that. We're not saying that, for her first constitution, we're not saying that we're taking rights away. We're just saying we're limiting what you can do to stop somebody else's rights. Just like I have the right to bear arms, but I do not have the right to shoot you because that takes away your rights. Going to her second contention, personal experience. Her second contention was basically her personal experience. It has no actual warrant to that contention. But going on to it, she basically said threatening speech leads to violence. And that contention, it kind of agreed with mine because threatening speech does lead to violence. That's why it needs to be restricted. Going to her third contention, silent protesting. Okay, even if people can silent protest all they want, we're not saying that we should freedom of speech, just go in trash, we don't want it. We're not saying that. We're saying that restrictions that are harmful to others should be taken care of, that we need to put restrictions on things that are harmful to others. Okay, now going on to my case, for the value criteria of this debate, first of all, my value was safety, and my criteria was deontology and reducing harms. My opponent, she had a value which was liberalism, but she had no criteria to back it up. Therefore, when it comes to the value criteria part of this, I win it. But when it comes to liberalism, okay, when it comes to liberalism, you can also achieve that with deontology and reducing harms. Because when you reduce harms, when you come to restricting threatening speech, that could take away your liberty. Because how would you have liberty if you have no safety? You wouldn't be able to have liberty without safety. So basically, my value and my criteria achieves her, because the ontology, the end justifying the means. With restrictions there, we're able to promote more liberty. We're able to promote more safety for the people. And reducing harms, restrictions, they reduce harms. Going to the contentions, she basically dropped most of my contentions. Going to my first contention, terrorist threats are not protected speech. She never really negated why it's not protected speech. She didn't really negate that. But terrorist threats are not protected speech, so therefore it's no undesirability when it comes to threatening speech. Like when you put restrictions on it, there's no undesirability when you put restrictions on it. Going to my second contention, restrictions prevent violence. I gave you examples of the school massacres when restrictions weren't put in place and the outcome of it. And for my third contention, I also give you an example of the Elise versus Chan case when restrictions should have been there and should have been handled with, but they weren't because they weren't being handled with because of the excuse, which wasn't valid enough. He basically said, okay, I can say anything I want. I'm coming after you. I could put your address on the line. I could harass you and your family, and I won't get arrested because I have freedom of speech. But that's wrong. We have freedom of speech, but we don't have the freedom to harm people. For these reasons, please vote F.
So just to sum up first of what I was trying to say in this whole argument, if you negate the topic, you're really going to be thinking about your rights and how they're supposed to be handled, because you are given the belief, you are under the false belief, obviously, that we can say whatever we want, because not too many people know about threatening speech not being protected, and how we feel that if the public, we are going to sweep under the idea that it is freedom of speech to say whatever we feel, because we are under that belief that we're allowed to say that. Also, when it comes down to riots, we're going to riot because we feel that we are not being heard. If you want to be heard, then maybe threatening speech is a force, and growing up, people are going to learn that maybe a little force is what's needed to push someone along. Like when you're growing up and you're going to school and you're not really making an effort to learn, and your teachers have to force you. They have to give you a little push to keep you going. And my personal experience, my cousin was bullied, and he was caught saying that he was going to do the same thing because that's what he felt like he needed to say to protect himself, because he himself was in danger. But you can't just look at it like we're the aggressors all the time. You have to look at it from a victim standpoint, because a victim, maybe their aggressors are never really caught saying anything, but when it comes to a victim being, caught saying, hey, I could do the same thing back because you're threatening to do this to me, and no one understands what you're trying to say because they're misunderstanding you, then obviously they're going to be caught because they don't really know the whole situation. They don't know the whole story. My criterion, as I probably forgot to mention, was pretty much freedom in general. Listen to the people, because you say that you're for the people. The government says they're for the people, but are they really is the question. Threats could also work as warnings, because, just a little force. Some people don't know when to stop hurting you. And if that sounds like it's working with the F, well, to me it's not, because if some people don't know that you're the victim and they see you as the aggressor, it's not fair, because you're just trying to protect yourself. And threatening speech isn't protected. It's too broad of a topic to cover anyways. And positivity and negativity, the F side, negativity is the negate side. They both work together ultimately. So to conclude everything, just negate the topic, because this is your rights, and also you have to think about your future generations and how they're going to react, because if they can't say what they're wanting to say, then they're going to feel like they can't say anything at all. Thank you.
Now, going on to the value criteria of this debate, even though my opponent might have forgot to mention it, in her constructive, it still dropped. So the value criteria debate, I went on that stance because I've already talked about how my criteria achieves my value, because the ontology, which means the end justifying the means and reducing harms. If we have restrictions, then we're gonna, for the means, restrictions in the ends is gonna promote safety. It's gonna promote prosperity and liberty when it comes to the means of it. And reducing harms, restrictions. When there's restrictions, we could promote safety. We could achieve safety. Now, going on to the contentions, her first contention was riots, that if people don't feel heard, that they're going to start revolting. But when it comes to that it's like you're throwing freedom of speech out of proportion, and the restrictions out of proportion, because we're not saying that, oh yeah, we're taking away freedom of speech, because restriction is the limitation. We're just saying we're going to limit what you can say, because if your rights neglect someone else's rights, then your rights can never cease to end for some fact that we have prisons. And if we didn't have this structure, if we didn't have this type of government, then we would have anarchy. We would have chaos. Who wants chaos and anarchy? That's why we have structures and rules that people have to obey by in communities. Now, going to her second condition, it was a personal experience. Basically, it was threatening speech leads to violence. Exactly. Threatening speech does lead to violence. That's why there needs to be restrictions on it. Her second condition really goes with my case, and it's really beneficial to it because it just shows how her example of her cousin, it shows how threatening speech is dangerous. It shows why it needs to be restricted. Now, going to her third contention, silent protesting. Okay, she keeps on saying that freedom of speech is going to be taken away, but like I have to keep on emphasizing, freedom of speech is not going to be taken away because it's just limitations on threatening speech, on unprotected speech, which is it's constitutional to put restrictions on it. Now, going on to my case. Okay, so my first constitution was that terror threats are not protected speech, which I keep on alliterating. Terror threats are not protected speech because from the beginning, when we had the Bill of Rights, First Amendment, it never says that we have the rights of threatening speech. We have the rights of hate speech. It never said that. It said we have the right of freedom of speech, freedom of opinion, but it didn't say we can inflict harm onto people. For my second constitution, restrictions prevent violence. I gave examples of how schools like Columbine and Red Lake Senior High School, the different massacres. I explained that. Going to my third contention, without restrictions, there's undesirability. I explained how the Elise versus Chang case, if it wouldn't be desirable for someone to stalk you and they get away with it and they continue to stalk you. That's not desirable at all. Judge, I believe you should vote for me because desirability is what we're weighing this topic the round over, and what's desirable is safety because safety is paramount within communities. For these reasons, please vote F.